Hey, creative person. Kerry Schafer here with Creativity Quest, part of the Global Authors on the Air network. And I'm really excited to be back again today for my second ever podcast in this series, talking to you about self-talk. So some of you are immediately already know where I'm going with this, but let's start here. I want you to think about doing something that is a little bit of a challenge for you, and then see what kind of pops up for you immediately in your head as far as the things that you're saying to yourself about that. Now, for some of you, maybe it's "atta girl, go for it," or "dude, you're awesome, you're totally going to win at this." For a lot of us, that's not what the voices in our head are saying. And stop me if you've heard any of these before. Things like, "you are totally going to suck at this. I don't know why you bothered to try. Nobody's going to listen to your stupid podcast. Why are you spending the time and the energy? You don't know how to write. Nobody is going to read your book anyway. You'll never get published. You're going to fail." Any of this sounding familiar to any of you guys? It's really pretty common. I recently was on a cruise. Now, this was a totally awesome opportunity for me. I went on a cruise with Cruising Writers, which is conducted by the awesome and fabulous Christina DeLay, who actually also happens to be my partner for Creative Wellness Retreats, which is something that I will mention a little bit more to you later. Anyways, so I got to go on the cruise, and I was speaking with some of the writers who were on this cruise, and we talked about self-talk. And what I had them do is an exercise I often do with my personal clients and with groups, which is to take a minute to just actually write down all of the things that your inner critic is saying to you. This is a really enlightening and awesome exercise, by the way, and I invite you to find the time to actually do this. It's easy to just listen to a podcast or watch the video of this and say, yeah, I know, and not do the work. But what you'll find is if you actually spend the time to listen, like really listen to your inner critic and what they're having to say to you, you might be just a little taken aback. When we did this on the cruise, the group, one of them looked up at me and said, "But it's so mean." Yeah, it often is really mean. And the next step to that we did actually was to look at each other and try and say those words to the other people in the room that we have just finished saying to ourselves. So imagine that right now. Think about something that you allow your inner critic to say to you when you're trying to engage in a creative project. So one of those negative things. And then imagine that you're saying that to somebody that you love and that you believe in, or even, God forbid, to a small creative child. A lot of us were that small creative child and did have those things said to us, which is probably where some of this inner critic voice comes from. But just imagine that for a minute. Think of somebody you love or a little really creative kiddo that you know, and imagine looking at that person in the eye and saying, "You suck. Why are you even trying to do this when you're totally going to fail? Nobody's going to listen. Nobody's going to care. Why are you even bothering?" How would that feel to you to look into the face of, another person and say those words? And if you're somebody that's like, "I have no problem with that," then, well, probably this podcast is not for you. But the rest of you, think about that and then just realize that you are sending this message to yourself on a regular, daily, repeated basis. Mostly it's going to be below your subconscious. So it's running on a channel that you're not even aware of. It's on in the background. It's background noise and you're not paying any attention, but it's there all the same. So it's like kind of subliminal advertising, right? Do you guys remember that? When I was a kid, it was a really big deal. As a matter of fact, the place I grew up in, there was this concern that, the advertising on TV had subliminal elements in it that was going to make us all go out and do drugs and, have terrible, disastrous lives. But anyway, that's not really what I want to talk about today, other than we do that to ourselves. So this little default network channel voice is going on inside us, telling us these negative things. And if you think about it, it's no wonder then that we often get stalled and stuck when we try to do something that's outside of our comfort zone. So you sit down to write a novel, you're all excited, maybe you're doing NaNoWriMo. It is November right now when I'm recording this. I know a lot of people are, and it starts out really well, but then that little voice kicks in. And you might not be aware of it. So if you're not listening to the voice and you're not paying attention, what happens is you find yourself avoiding. So you just suddenly don't have time to do your writing, or you just can't get to your painting today. The refrigerator needs to be cleaned. You haven't dusted the tops of those shelves that nobody can see unless they're up on a stepladder, and for some reason that needs to be done right now. These kinds of things happen, and we don't even realize it's because we're telling ourselves that we can't do the thing that we want to do. Well, you know what? That really sucks. And I don't want that to be something that gets in the way for you or for me or really for anybody out there who's trying to do anything good in the world. So one of the very, very first steps is actually becoming conscious, paying attention. So I challenge you to spend some time listening to what you say to yourself and what your critic is saying to yourself. So the journaling exercise is really good, but just kind of being aware, you know, what happens when you trip or if you drop something when you're on your way out of the house, or if you do like I did this morning and actually spill coffee all over your laptop instead of, you know, hitting your mouth because you're not paying attention to what you're doing. What's the first thing that comes out of your mouth? For me, it used to be, oh, you stupid idiot. I would actually look in the mirror and go, you are so stupid. That's not helpful, right? That's not helpful at all. So when I figured out that I was doing this a little while ago, I started to make a shift. And so I don't call myself stupid anymore. I say, hey, sweetheart, it's okay. Let's do it better next time. Take a breath, start over, stuff happens. Like I would to one of my kids on a good day. Not that I was a perfect parent. Remembering back, I'm sure that I have inflicted some sort of psychological damage on my children. I believe that we all do that, and there's no avoidance. But anyway, again, that's another story, and I'm straying down all kinds of little rabbit trails. Coming back to making the change, become aware, notice what you're doing. And when you notice it, the very, very next temptation is going to be to start beating yourself up about it. So, you know, you notice that you're calling yourself a stupid idiot. And the very next thing you catch yourself doing is telling yourself you're a stupid idiot for calling yourself a stupid idiot for calling yourself a stupid idiot. And you get yourself caught in this endless, ongoing, insane cycle that serves no one and gets you nowhere. So when you notice that you're doing these things, stop, notice, and then see how you can reframe. So, for example, take a thing that your critic might be telling you, which is, you totally suck at this. You can take that one of two ways. You can be a rebellious child and come back with a, I don't care, I'm doing it anyways. Thank you to Joe Badonsky for that one. Or you can reframe it in that, maybe I'm not totally great at this, but I'm getting better. Or, hey, I'm learning. Or, cut me some slack, dude. I'm just figuring out how to do this. That's one reframe. And there are so many other ways of reframing that particular question or statement. The other thing about, now that I've said questions, I know my subconscious was sending me a little message on that one, because here's the other thing about questions. Sometimes our critic talks to us in questions as well. So we ask ourselves these kinds of questions. How come I'm not better at this? How come I'm not published yet? Why don't I have an agent? How come more people aren't buying my books? Why can't I draw like my brother? Why does my painting look like a child's painting, which can be really cool, by the way? Why can't I do this better? Or why can't I be different? Here's the thing. Your brain loves to play with questions. So your subconscious really can't even resist trying to answer those kinds of questions that you throw out at yourself. So when you're sending out negative answer questions like that. There is no way for that question to be answered other than negatively. How come I'm not as good as my brother is going to end up with an answer because he's smarter than you, or mom loved him best, or, you know, something along those lines, right? But if we shift the questions, if we shift them to something like, how can I be better at this? What would be helpful for me in trying to write this book? What would be the next small step forward for me to take in order to improve my process? What would be one thing that I can do right now that would be easy? Those kind of questions, your brain will find answers to them too, and the answers are going to be much more helpful than the more negative kinds of questions that we automatically tend to throw at ourselves. So I would really love to hear back from you guys about this and to know what kind of self-talk concerns you're having. I do hear this again and again from my clients, and I know that it's a pervasive problem. I think when we were on the cruise, we actually were very lucky to have an author with us who's a multiple times New York Times bestseller, and really, really very successful, very confident. She did this exercise with us, and she wrote down all of the things that her self-critic was saying to her, and they sounded very much the same as the messages that the rest of us were getting. The difference being that she's learned not to listen to that, and it doesn't stop her. And that's what I want for you, oh creative one, is to transform these statements, to be aware of them, to learn that your critic doesn't get to stop you, and that you get to reshape those statements into something that is more helpful, that helps you get to your creative work instead of stopping you. That's it for me for today. I really thank you for listening. I want to remind you that I am available as a coach if this is something that you need a little bit of help with one-on-one. And I hope that you will stop by my website, swimmingnorth.com, and maybe drop me a comment. Thanks so much for listening. Go be creative.